Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
So, Typhoon Kiko ay
Typhoon Kiko International named Shentu has further weakened while it continues to move over the coastal waters of Itbayat, Batanes.
President Duterte has urged Senator Richard Gordon to open the financial records of the Philippine Red Cross for thorough scrutiny by the Commission on Audit. Duterte made the call as he vented frustrations over the series of hearings by the Senate's Blue Ribbon Committee.
And America is to mark the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 with solemn ceremonies given added poignancy by the recent chaotic withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan and return to power of the Taliban.
And NASA confirms that its Perseverance Mars rover succeeded in collecting its first rock sample for scientists to pore over when a future mission eventually brings it back to Earth.
First, here in the country, Shentu or Typhoon Kiko continues to weaken while moving over the coastal waters of Itbayat, Batanes. Typhoon Kiko made landfall in Batanes this morning, Saturday, and tropical cyclone wind signal number 4 has been raised over Batanes and the northeastern portion of the Babuyan Islands. Here's the latest from DOST Pagasa weather specialist, Raymond Ordinario. Take a look.
So, Typhoon Kiko ay patuloy na umihina abang ito ay kumikilos dito sa coastal water ng Itbayat, Batanes. So, ito na yung kanyang tinatahak na direksyon at ito ay kumikilos nga dahil kahapon na-reach na ng bagyong Kiko ang kanyang peak intensity, yung pinakamalakas na intensity o yung strength ng bagyong Kiko kahapon at 215 kilometers per hour. Ngayon ito ay kumikilos na ng general direction ng north-northwest at the speed of 15 kilometers per hour. Sa ngayon, nakataas na lamang ang babala ng bagyo bilang 4 dito sa northern portion ng Batanes, which includes nga itong isla ng Itbayat. Tropical Cyclone Wind Signal number 3 sa nalalabing bahagi ng Batanes Province. Signal number 2 naman sa northern portion ng Babuyan Islands, which includes sa mga isla ng Babuyan, Panitan at Calayan. So ito yung mga isla na apektado pa rin ng signal number 2. At signal number 1 naman sa nalalabing bahagi ng Babuyan Island. So nakikita natin wala na tayong signal dito sa mainland Cagayan, ngunit may mga pag-ulan pa rin tayong naasahan. Dala pa rin yan ng outer periphery ng bagyong si Kiko at ang interaction nito sa ating habagat.
Meanwhile, about 120 families in the provinces of Cagayan and Isabela have been preemptively evacuated due to Typhoon Kiko, according to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council on Saturday. Now, this is equivalent to 415 persons from 15 villages in 2 provinces, according to the NDRRMC in its update. Meanwhile, Philippine National Police Chief General Guillermo Eleazar directed police forces in areas near the path of Kiko to assist in disaster response efforts.
Now, Typhoon Jelena has so far left a total of 286,772,948 million worth of damage to agriculture and infrastructure as it swept through parts of Luzon and the Visayas. In its update as of 8 a.m. Friday, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said damage to agriculture was estimated at 256,097,695 million pesos in Mimaropa, Bicol, Western Visayas, and Eastern Visayas. Meanwhile, infrastructure damage was placed at 30,675,253 million pesos in Mimaropa, Bicol, and Western Visayas.
Meanwhile, Taiwan is now bracing for severe Typhoon Shentu as it heads towards the island. Shentu is expected to bring heavy rain to most of Taiwan, even though it was losing strength after making landfall in northern Philippines. Taiwanese forecaster Chu Cheng-yi said it will be closest to Taiwan on Saturday and Sunday. The public should take precautions against strong winds and downpours. Most projections forecast the storm will continue to swing northeast and could hit Taiwan directly over the weekend. At one point, Shantu was categorized as a super typhoon. And meteorologists say that while Shantu is powerful, it is small in size and will be unpredictable.
Tropical storm Olaf swept across Mexico's Baja California peninsula yesterday, Friday, bringing strong winds and heavy rain to the major beach resorts of Los Cabos before losing its hurricane force. Olaf made landfall near the city of San Jose del Cabo late Thursday as a Category 2 hurricane, packing maximum winds of 100 miles or 160 kilometers per hour, that according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. It weakened over land and lost its hurricane status as winds dropped to 70 miles per hour. A public hospital in Los Cabos, one of Mexico's top tourist destinations, was evacuated due to the risk of flooding. Mexico is regularly lashed by tropical storms. Last month, a Category 3 hurricane named Grace left 11 people dead after hitting eastern Mexico. Storm Olaf came as Mexico recovers from a 7.1 magnitude earthquake and major flooding elsewhere in the disaster-prone country.
Meanwhile, a tornado hit the Sicilian island of Pantelleria on Friday, killing 2 people and seriously injuring 4 others, according to the Civil Protection Agency. Now, it said an off-duty fireman was among the dead on the tiny volcanic outcrop, a tourist hotspot which lies closer to North Africa than Italy. The wind ripped down a coastal road in seconds, according to media reports. It was an apocalyptic sight, according to an unnamed paramedic at the scene, telling this to ANSA news agency. A hospital helicopter from nearby Lampedusa Island was ready to provide assistance once the weather improved, it said. And Pantelleria is famed for its volcanic cliffs and hot spring waters, regularly attracts A-listers from Sting to Giorgio Armani.
Back here in the Philippines, President Duterte has urged Senator Richard Gordon to open the financial records of the Philippine Red Cross, or the PRC, for thorough scrutiny by the Commission on Audit. Duterte made that call as he vented frustrations over the series of hearings by the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, led by Gordon, on the government's procurement of medical supplies amid the pandemic. Take a look.
Ito naman si Gordon. Itong si Gordon, malalim itong away namin. Talaga mag-aaway kami nito. He claims that the Red Cross is totally independent. Tapos sabi niya, because I'm looking for the annual reports. In the law sa Red Cross, creating the Red Cross, the Red Cross must submit to the President an annual report. Since then, wala akong natanggap. 6 na taon na ako, Mr. Senator Gordon. Nasaan na ang report? If it is totally independent, you are correct. But it is not totally independent because you have been receiving aid, financial aid, from the Republic of the Philippines. At nga, nagkukuha ka pa dyan sa PCSO ng pera. Now, any money belonging to the government of the Republic of the Philippines given to an agency, whatever be the nature, if you're operating here and you receive the money and spend it, you are accountable to the government and therefore an audit is in order. Ngayon kung ayaw mo, mapipilitan akong totally disassociate with you. I will stop government, the national government and all, from having transaction with you. Wala akong pakialam, hindi ako magbigay ng pera sa iyo. Saka, as far as I am concerned, Red Cross does not exist. And you can create a controversy there or a crisis. I do not mind because I said I am on the right track. Either you submit on auditing procedure or we quarrel. Kumusta ito si Gwendolyn Pang? That lady from Sulu na nag-join sa Red Cross. Pakisagot lang nito. At pwede ka rin magsagot sa akin. Ako pa ang magbigay ng lista sa iyo.
Earlier, presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said President Duterte has basis to urge COA to audit funds received by the PRC. Citing Section 4.8 of COA Circular number 93-003, Roque said PRC can be audited once the government requests COA to carry out the special audit of NGOs like PRC on case-to-case basis. President Duterte, however, acknowledged that COA earlier said it has no jurisdiction over PRC. He nevertheless said he is ready for a long legal battle to persuade COA to conduct an audit of PRC's financial records.
Staying here in the country, in other news, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque apologized for his emotional behavior against a group of medical professionals who made a pitch to retain Manila under hard lockdown. This after a leaked video of Roque during a recent interagency task force for the management of emerging infectious diseases meeting showing him scolding doctors who opposed the relaxation of quarantine restrictions in Metro Manila amid the spike of the COVID-19 infections. Let's listen in.
Sa ibang bagay, may kumalat po na video tungkol sa aming meeting sa IATF. Unang-una po, classified secret ang mga pagpupulong ng IATF. Bakit po? Kasi lahat po ng desisyon ng IATF makakaapekto sa lahat ng Pilipino, kay mayaman, kay mahirap. Kinakailangan po talaga magkaroon ng debate dahil kung wala po talagang debate, baka mamaya hindi makagawa ng tamang desisyon ang IATF. Ganun pa man, lumabas na po yan. Well, unang-una po, kinukumpirma ko po na tayo po ay naging emosyonal at pasensya naman po kayo, tao lamang. Doon sa rekomendasyon ng dalawang doktor, si Dr. Limpin at si Dr. Dance, na mag-impose ng hard ECQ lockdown. At naging emosyonal din po si Dr. Limpin at napaiyak. Doon po ako naging emosyonal. Kasi para namang importante rin po na marinig yung damdamin ng mga maliliit na tao nating mga kababayan na nagugutom na po dahil sa parating pag-lockdown. Hindi po tamad ang mga Pilipino ha. Hindi po sila umaasa sa ayuda. Handa po silang magtrabaho. Bigyan lang natin sila ng pagkakataon magtrabaho. Alam po natin na marami talagang mamamatay at namamatay po sa COVID. Pero nandyan po ang realidad na sa Metro Manila, halos kalahati na rin po ang ating nabakunahan. Bakit po tayo mag-hard lockdown na naman? Samantalang, kaya nga po natin pinabilis ang proseso ng pagbakuna para makapagbukas tayo ng ekonomiya, magkaroon po ng mas maraming trabaho ang ating mga kababayan. Lininaw ko lang po na kapag ikaw ay hindi sang-ayon sa hard lockdown na magiging dahilan para magutom ang ating mga kababayan, hindi po ibig sabihin yon na hindi ka na concerned sa mga nagkakasakit. Lahat po tayo, nagkaroon po na po tayo ng kamag-anak, ng kaibigan na namatay at nagkasakit sa COVID. Lahat po tayo napaiyak na rin po sa trahedya na sumalanta, hindi lang po sa Pilipinas, kundi sa buong mundo. Ang pakiusap ko lang po, huwag po nating isipin na ang mga desisyon ay para mga clinical decision lamang. ito po yung nakakaapekto sa buhay, lalong-lalo na ng mga nagugutom at naghihirap na mga Pilipino.
In other news, President Biden is firing back at Republican critics of COVID vaccine mandates for most American workers. Some GOP governors are threatening to file lawsuits over the issue. While visiting a school in Washington, D.C., the president told his opponents to have at it. Take a look.
Disappointed that particularly some of the Republican governors have been so cavalier with the health of these kids, so cavalier with the health of their communities. We're playing for real here. This isn't a game. To all the school officials trying to do the right thing by our children, I will always be on your side, no matter how much heat you're getting from outside.
And I think the problem I have with Joe Biden more than anything, this guy doesn't take responsibility for anything. He's always trying to blame other people, blame other states. This is a guy that promised when he ran for president that he would shut down the virus. If you look now, there's 300% more cases in this country today than a year ago when we had no vaccines at all. So his policies are not working. He's doubling down on things that are going to be very destructive for the livelihoods of many, many Americans, and obviously going to be destructive to our constitutional system and the rule of law.
Governor DeSantis won a round today on a related battle. An appeals court ruled Friday that Florida schools cannot force students and staff to wear masks to fight the pandemic. DeSantis has issued an executive order banning mask mandates in schools and threatened consequences for districts that defy the order. 13 of Florida's 67 school districts made masks obligatory in recent weeks, ignoring DeSantis's executive order against such policies. The state government punished 2 of them that ignored the governor by withholding funding equal to the monthly salary of the school board members. Friday's new ruling means that the state can keep sanctioning school districts that defy the governor's no mask mandate order. But the U.S. Department of Education said Friday it would cover any financial penalty slapped on school districts that defy DeSantis.
Back here in the country, President Duterte has extended the validity of the state of calamity for 1 more year, or until September 12 next year, due to the pandemic. Under Proclamation 1218 inked Friday, the President extended the status unless earlier lifted or extended as circumstances may warrant. The President decided to extend the period of state of calamity nationwide following the recommendation of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. His decision also came amid the spike in COVID-19 cases and deaths, despite the government's efforts to stop the further transmission of the dreaded disease. President Duterte also approved the red list of countries where travel bans will be imposed effective September 12 until the 18th. The red list covers Azerbaijan, Guadeloupe, Guam, Israel, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, St. Lucia, and Switzerland. Passengers coming from or who have been to the said countries within 14 days immediately preceding arrival in the Philippines will be prohibited from entering except returning Filipinos via repatriation flights and special commercial flights allowed under existing resolutions of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases.
Former French Health Minister Agnès Buzyn was charged Friday over her handling of the COVID-19 pandemic after investigators at a special court in Paris concluded there were grounds to prosecute her. Buzyn has been charged with endangering the lives of others, the prosecutor of the Republic's Court of Justice said, but not for a second possible offense of failure to stop a disaster. Bazin, who resigned from her post in February last year, said initially in January 2020 that there were practically no risk of importing COVID-19 from the Chinese city at the origin of the outbreak, Wuhan, and then said the risk of a spread of the coronavirus among the population is very small. A month later, as she left the ministry to launch a failed bid to become Paris mayor, she claimed that the tsunami has yet to come, in an apparent contradiction of her earlier statements. France also faced a severe shortage of masks at the start of the pandemic, and the government was inconsistent in its advice on face coverings, initially questioning their effectiveness, then mandating them in public spaces. Members of the public are allowed to file complaints to the court if they consider they are the victim of a crime carried out by a member of the government.
While the fourth wave of COVID-19 is on a downward trend in France, the intensive care units at Lyon Sud Hospital are far from empty, with younger and unvaccinated patients infected with the Delta variant. Medics are already overwhelmed. Take a look.
Alors concrètement, sur cette quatrième vague, ce qui apparaît, c'est que nous avons une population jeune. La moyenne d'âge dans ce service actuellement est de 54 ans et nous avons plusieurs patients qui ont 35, 36, 37 ans, sans forcément des antécédents de pathologies chroniques.
Non, mais c'est bon, là, on peut reposer, la narine va arriver.
Il faut impérativement que les gens se vaccinent pour pouvoir continuer à absorber l'accueil des patients qui arrivent aux urgences et qui ont besoin d'être hospitalisés. Concrètement, l'hôpital est à bout de souffle et si jamais il y a une vraie vague qui arrive, comme la première, deuxième ou troisième vague, je ne sais pas comment on arrivera à se réadapter pour accueillir tous ces patients.
Qu'est-ce que ça veut faire? Alors, c'est ça que vous m'avez dit. Hein. Ouais. Donc en aide, ça veut dire qu'il commence à participer un peu avec la machine.
Back here in the Philippines, the Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez had suggested to President Duterte to allow more activities for vaccinated individuals. The DTI executive had been pushing to allow fully vaccinated individuals to avail of dine-in and personal care services. Let's listen in.
The need to have a different approach dito sa ating pag-solve sa COVID. Hindi lang lockdown. We proposed twice sa IATF na at least i-allow na yung mga vaccinated. I think some senators, congressmen also said, palapasin na natin yung mga vaccinated, lalo na dun sa mga areas na bawal sa ngayon. Ngayon, kunwari, under MECQ, bawal yung mga restaurant na dine-in, bawal yung mga personal care services like salon, barber shops. These are labor-intensive. Itong sector na ito, mga 2 million ang employed sa restaurant, mga dine-in, ang mga salon, mga 400,000. So, nationwide. If you look into NCR lang po, even if you divide it, malaki pa rin, 1.2 million employed. So, these sectors have been closed since August 6. nung nag-ECQ. And after that, nag-MECQ tayo. Pero ginawang sarado pa rin siya. And fine, kasi mataas yung kaso nga noon. Unfortunately, tumagal ng tumagal. More than 1 month na. So sabi nga ng mga nagtatrabaho dyan, hindi nga kami mamatay ng COVID, mamatay kami ng gutom, ng hunger. So, ang iniisip po natin, safe reopening, especially during itong MECQ, yung middle ground is para safe, we allow only the vaccinated.
In other pandemic news, Thailand plans to reopen Bangkok to fully vaccinated visitors in October, according to officials, as the kingdom seeks to salvage a tourism industry hammered by the pandemic. Take a look. Before COVID, tourism made up a fifth of Thailand's national income, but severe travel curbs imposed to fight the virus saw the usual flood of foreign visitors dwindle to almost nothing, contributing to the economy's worst performance in over 20 years. The kingdom is pressing ahead with plans to reopen despite a deadly third wave of infections driven by the Delta variant. The Tourism Authority of Thailand said that from October 1, fully jabbed foreign travelers will be able to visit Bangkok and 4 other provinces without undergoing 2 weeks hotel quarantine. Instead, the 5 areas, also including Chiang Mai, Chonburi, Phetchaburi, and Prachuap Kirikan provinces, are expected to follow a sandbox model of the type piloted since July in the holiday island of Phuket. Under the sandbox scheme, tourists have to stay within a certain area for 7 days after arrival and take COVID tests. Later in October, 21 more destinations will be added to the list, including Chiang Rai, Sukhothai, and a popular seaside getaway Rayong. But Thailand's third and deadliest COVID wave has not yet fully subsided, and the tourism agency warned the plans could change. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back to the news. U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Americans to show unity, quote, our greatest strength, in a video posted Friday on the eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Take a look.
Days that followed September 11th, 2001, we saw heroism everywhere, in places expected and unexpected. We also saw something all too rare, a true sense of national unity. Unity and resilience, the capacity to recover and repair in the face of trauma. Unity and service, the 9/11 generation stepping up to serve and protect in the face of terror, to get those terrorists who were responsible, to show everyone seeking to do harm to America that we will hunt you down and we will make you pay.
America marks the 20th anniversary of 9/11 Saturday with solemn ceremonies given added poignancy by the recent chaotic withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan and return to power of the Taliban. Heart-wrenching commemorations will unfold at each of the three sites where 19 Al-Qaeda hijackers, mostly from Saudi Arabia, crashed packed airliners, striking the cultural, financial, and political hearts of the United States and changing the world forever. The Taliban, who once sheltered bin Laden, are back ruling Afghanistan. The mighty U.S. military, humiliated in Guantanamo Bay, accused the 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 other men continue to await trial 9 years after charges were filed. Even the full story of how the attack came to happen remains secret. Only last week did Biden order the release of classified documents from the FBI investigation over the next 6 months.
Meanwhile, Afghan pop star Ariana Saeed recalled asking her fiancé one thing as they snuck into Kabul's chaotic airport after the Taliban moved in: "Don't let them take me away alive." Saeed, with 1.4 million Instagram followers and who is widely likened to American reality star Kim Kardashian, managed to flee on a U.S. military plane on August 16 on the second day of the Taliban takeover of Kabul. That's isn't it?
Before we made that journey from the airport, from the house to the airport, I made my fiance promised me something. I said to him, you know, Hasib, now everything that has happened, there's no way to say, oh, I wish this, I wish that, but the only request I'm gonna make of you is, if I'm about to be taken away alive, just shoot me. You know, just shoot me in the head, kill me, but don't let them take me away alive. And that was the only thing I was scared of. I wasn't scared of, you know, dying or anything. We are dealing with a bunch of terrorists once again, and if the international community does not care and they keep on watching, we will see the repeat of 9/11 once again. Because obviously, if they leave Afghanistan in the hands of terrorists, history will definitely repeat itself, and they will. I hope that these women can continue with that, because if they don't say anything right now, this is a very sensitive time for Afghan women. The only way for me to return to Afghanistan would be if Taliban are not around anymore. As Taliban or, you know, thirsty for my blood. I mean, I was a target already in Afghanistan for the past 10 years. But honestly, my life has totally been different from all the singers that you can imagine. I mean, imagine, you know, doing being a judge on a musical show and you have to wear an armored jacket not to be killed. I don't think any of them has lived that, and I have lived that through. For that reason, I think I've had a very different life from them. I respect them, I love them, I wish I could have a life like them, but how can you blame your fortune that you were born in a war-torn country like Afghanistan?
Her first attempt on August 15, the day the Islamists entered Kabul while U.S. forces scrambled to evacuate foreigners and some Afghans after 20 years of war, failed because the plane never took off. The stakes could hardly be higher when she made her second attempt the following day with Kalashnikov-toting fighters surrounding the airport and Allied forces trying to control the desperate crowds at its gates. Her fiancé and manager, Hasib Sayed, was communicating with her by walkie-talkie in a second car. The couple made their way to Doha, Kuwait, and the U.S. eventually returning to the flat they had in Istanbul.
Now, in a video message marking the 20th anniversary of the September 11 terrorist attack, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Al-Qaeda attacks in the U.S. failed to divide those who believe in freedom and democracy. Here's Ashley Espirito for the report.
Thank you. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Friday The perpetrators of the September 11, 2001 attacks failed to destroy Western values in a video message for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Johnson said, "We can now say the perspective of 20 years that they failed to shake our belief in freedom and democracy," he said in the message delivered ahead of the anniversary. He continued to say that they failed to drive our nations apart or cause us to abandon our values or to live in permanent fear. Johnson, who was born in New York, said the 67 Britons who died in the attacks are a symbol of the eternal friendship between the United Kingdom and the United States. He insisted that Britain's resolve to uphold the values of freedom and democracy was not shaken by last month's withdrawal of NATO forces from Afghanistan, which saw the Taliban regain power. The previous Taliban regime sheltered Osama bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda movement, which carried out the 9/11 attacks. Johnson said recent events in Afghanistan only strengthen our determination to remember those who were taken from us. The fact that Britons and Americans were coming together to mourn the dead in 2001 demonstrates the failure of terrorism and the strength of the bonds between us. The United States presented the UK with a sculpture made of twisted metal debris from the remains of the World Trade Center in New York. As London mayor back then, Johnson unveiled the sculpture in the city in 2011, but it was later removed and is now on display at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in East London. Let's watch and listen to the Prime Minister's message.
But while the terrorists imposed their burden of grief and suffering, and while the threat persists today, we can now say, with the perspective of 20 years, that they failed to shake our belief in freedom and democracy. They failed to drive our nations apart or to cause us to abandon our values or to live in permanent fear. The fact that we are coming together today in sorrow but also in faith and resolve demonstrates the failure of terrorism and the strength of the bonds between us. Recent events in Afghanistan only strengthen our determination to remember those who were taken from us, cherish the survivors and those who still grieve, and hold fast to our belief in liberty and democracy, which will always prevail over every foe.
I'm Ashley Espiritu reporting from London, United Kingdom, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Ashley. Meanwhile, the British government's furlough scheme, the scheme that supported millions of private sector jobs during the pandemic, is about to end. To learn more about it, here's Janelle Basuga from our EBC UK Bureau.
The British government's furlough scheme that has supported millions of private sector jobs during the pandemic is close to ending, a move that risks a spike in unemployment according to economists. Let's listen in.
Without products, there's no business because you need to have the products to sell. You know, if you have with empty shelves like this, no one's going to come into the shop anyway. Yeah, even through COVID, we didn't get that much help because, as far as the government's concerned, shops like this are allowed to open and they're just allowed to carry on. So we only got one grant, which was right at the beginning. After that, we got no help, and I'm not expecting any help due to this. So before COVID, the streets were just constantly buzzing. We'd come in at 6 o'clock in the morning and the business would start straight away. We'd go home at 7, and sometimes we'd have to force our way to close the door because there's people still trying to come in. But now, now we're just standing here basically all day waiting for people to come in.
Experts, however, do not expect sectors seriously affected by a shortage of staff owing to the virus outbreak and Brexit, such as road haulage, to necessarily benefit from the bigger pool of available workers. The Treasury stated ahead of a multi-billion-pound programme that the furlough scheme has played a key role protecting nearly 12 million jobs over the last 18 months. With the UK economy in recovery mode thanks to the lifting of lockdown restrictions at home and abroad, Britain's unemployment rate stands at 4.7%, down from the pandemic peak of 5.2% at the end of last year. But the UK already has more than 1 million job vacancies, despite the Furlough Scheme supporting jobs at a cost of almost £70 billion. Paula Dales, the chief UK economist at Capital Economics Research Group, noted it is certainly possible, if not likely, that there will be a temporary fall in employment and rise in unemployment in October. However, he believes that the strength of the economy will mean that either most of these workers will find a job before long, or more likely the other unemployed people will find work and offset the decline. Britain's economy rebounded 4.8% in the second quarter as the government began relaxing lockdown restrictions amid its fast-paced vaccination program. However, the country's factories, restaurants and supermarkets are facing stubborn supply problems. COVID helped spark a supply chain crisis around the world. In the UK, multiple lockdowns prompted also a fresh exodus of EU workers who filled many jobs in the logistics, construction and hospitality sectors. The UK has faced major border delays after Britain's exit from the European Union on January 1st, while new immigration rules have disrupted recruitment. Such labour supply problems could last up to 2 years and will not be solved by the end of the Furlough Scheme, the head of Britain's main business lobby group warned Monday. Swedish furniture giant IKEA this week became the latest major retailer to warn of supply issues at the UK operations after McDonald's ran out of the milkshakes and supermarket giant Tesco forecast shortages to its Christmas products. The number of people on UK furlough has fallen from a peak of 8.9 million in May last year to around 2 million at the end of July, according to official data. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, Sydney has extended its lockdown for another month and introduced a partial curfew as Australia's largest city struggled to contain a fast-spreading coronavirus outbreak. Here's Patricia Madroño for more.
The state of Victoria has now spent over 200 days in lockdown since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, making it the most lockdown state in the world. It has now been 1 month since the 6th lockdown has been put in place. However, with more than 100 new cases recorded per day in the last week, hopes for the lockdown being lifted on the 2nd of September as planned were squashed. The Victorian government has issued $2.34 billion to support 175,000 businesses that have been adversely affected. Vaccination efforts throughout the state are being maintained, with Professor Sutton stressing that aiming for a majority of the state to be vaccinated will ensure that the rate of spread does not continue to increase, and to avoid the possibility of daily caseloads reaching the thousands. Currently, almost 50,000 tests are being administered every day. The number of daily cases has been steadily rising, demonstrating the increased transmissibility of the Delta variant that has been brought over from Sydney. As of the 4th of September 2021, 1,297 locally acquired cases have been recorded. Worryingly, many of the new cases are not directly linked to known chains of transmission, driving intense investigation to determine groups who are at risk. The Chief Health Officer of Victoria, Professor Brett Sutton, advised that the peak of the outbreak is yet to come, and that it was likely that infections not linked to known chains were due to undetected arrivals from New South Wales. With the current rate of vaccination, the Victorian government projects that up to 80% of Victorians will be vaccinated with double doses of either the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine by September 23, which is when the lockdown is set to be lifted. Citizens are encouraged to go and get vaccinated as soon as possible, as there are expected to be measures put in place for the unvaccinated that reduce their access to outdoor entertainment and dining venues once the state is phased out of lockdown. Reporting from Melbourne, Australia, I am Patricia Madroño, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, another news, NASA confirms that its Perseverance Mars rover succeeded in collecting its first rock sample for scientists to pore over when a future mission eventually brings it back to Earth. During a press briefing from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in California, scientist Meenakshi Wadhwa calls the sample collection a truly historic achievement. Take a look.
You know, at NASA, we get to see a lot of things that rewrite the history books. And what occurred September 6th at Jezero Crater is right up there with any of them. I'm happy to say that not one, but that the first 2 samples of another planet are prepped and stowed as the first official candidate samples to be returned to Earth by a future mission.
Today, but I cannot overstate the significance of these rock samples that were collected by Perseverance. This is a truly historic achievement. You know, the very first rock cores collected on another terrestrial planet. It's amazing. These 2 rock cores, as well as actually the first sample tube that contains Martian atmosphere, these actually represent now the beginning of Mars sample return. These first core samples will actually be among tens of other samples that will be collected by the Perseverance rover in the many months and years to come. And the point of collecting these really well-documented rock, soil, and atmosphere samples, though, is to bring them back to Earth so that we can analyze them here in the best and most capable Earth-based laboratories so that we can answer some of humanity's biggest questions.
I believe every single surface mission to Mars has observed what we believe to be an ancient habitable environment. This was particularly hit home by the Curiosity rover mission, which discovered within the first year of its mission a conclusively habitable lake environment. And we knew already that Jezero Crater had such a habitable lake environment, and that's what brought us there to Jezero. But the big difference here is that now we have a sample of that potential habitable environments ready to come back to Earth.
I think the human desire to put humans on Mars is very strong. That exploration drive that we have. I really believe that we are going to do that one way or another. And once we better understand the environment on Mars and better understand whether or not there was potentially life there in the past, will help us design where we want to go and how we want to go. But I think it's definitely going to happen.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Welcome back. Stricter community quarantine restrictions imposed in August has pulled down auto sales downward. The Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines Incorporated, or CAMPI, and Truck Manufacturers Association, or TMA, reported Friday that vehicle sales in August this year declined by 11.5% year-on-year and 26.3% month-on-month. Combined sales of the industry groups last month reached 15,847 units, lower than the 17,906 units sold in August last year, and 21,498 units sold in July this year. Campi President Romel Gutierrez said in a statement, and I quote, "The message of this bleak performance is worth noting. Stricter lockdown strategy in response to curbing the pandemic affects the auto industry's recovery this year."
In other business news, Toyota, the world's largest or top-selling automaker, said on Friday it would further slash production in Japan and abroad because of ongoing virus disruptions and a chronic global chip shortage. The Japanese car giant will cut output by 70,000 units in September and 330,000 in October, it said, adding that the move would reduce projected annual production for the fiscal year ending March 2022 to 9 million vehicles. The auto industry has struggled to recover from the pandemic as new waves of infections affect production lines and with a continuing global shortage of the semiconductor used in modern vehicles. Microchips are essential for car electronic systems and have been in short supply since the end of last year. When the pandemic hit, car makers scaled back orders and chip makers shifted output to consumer electronics as people splurged on equipment to work and relax at home, leaving automakers in a tight situation as demand for vehicles picked up.
Meanwhile, Pakistan International Airlines, or PIA, will resume flights from Islamabad to Kabul next week, according to a spokesman, becoming the first foreign commercial service since the Taliban seized power last month. Now, Kabul airport was severely damaged during a chaotic evacuation over 120,000 people that ended with the withdrawal of U.S. forces on August 30. The Taliban have been scrambling to get it operating again with Qatari technical assistance. Now, PIA spokesman Abdullah Hafiz Khan said the service would depend on demand. He said they've received 73 requests from humanitarian relief agencies and journalists. In the last 2 days, Qatar Airways has operated 2 charter flights out of Kabul, carrying mostly foreigners and Afghans who missed being taken out during the evacuation. An Afghan airline resumed domestic flights last week.
Brazilian airline Gol must cover the cosmetic costs of their female flight attendants and airport staff following a labor court's decision, with a union official saying the ruling could influence other professional sectors. Now, in the July 29 verdict reported by local media this week, the court said the firm must provide free of charge to all its female employees the makeup set provided for its personal presentation code, as well as pay for cosmetic procedures, including manicures and hair removal. Gol's women staff, unlike the men, were contractually obliged to devote part of their income to modifying their appearance, Southern State Santa Catarina's Labor Ministry Court said. In compensation, the airline will have to pay women about $42 per month for the expense.
And the awe-inspiring collective culture of our Australian Native people were brought together a unique and energized exhibition called In Cahoots. For more of that, here's Morgan Goodfellow for the report. Morgan.
The awe-inspiring and collective culture of Australia's Native people collaborate, bringing together an exhibition called In Cahoots. In Cahoots has been in the making for 2 years, spanning the nation, gathering the language of our Australian outback, pertaining its life into this exhibition we see here today. The exhibition is a result of 6 residencies with remote and regional Aboriginal art centres undertaken by independent Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal artists from across Australia. Such camaraderie focused the angle of the harshness and versatility of Australia's outback that we don't often see, such as washed out roads, flat tyres and extreme weather, expressing the product of such an environment, contributing to the personal and creative logistical efforts that have gone into these collaborative efforts. The life of these projects presents the willingness to explore, experiment, learn and share. Taking the time to appreciate the art displayed here today, I also asked other fellow art enthusiasts taking part what their thoughts were of the exhibition. Here's what they had to say.
I liked looking at the different pieces, particularly the one of the old cars with the leather put on top of them. I thought that was really unique.
Our gallery's done a pretty good job in displaying the exhibition, and I think this exhibition's got a good range of artworks, and I quite liked it.
I think you need to come out and have a look at. Love the superhero pictures, and also all that recyclable stuff that was on the wall, using all recyclable materials to make parts of for the big mural.
Interesting to see that mix of real contemporary kind of practice alongside the traditional techniques. Yeah.
Great. And would you recommend the In Cahoots art exhibition to your family and friends?
I absolutely would. I think it's quite interesting. I'm always interested in art, and I think that, it's a doorway into a different kind of world. So.
From the 20th of August until the 22nd of October, In Cahoots art exhibition will be on display at the Pinnacles Art Gallery here in Townsville. If you happen to be in the area, be sure to check out this unique and diverse display of culture while you can. Reporting from Townsville, Australia, this is Morgan Goodfellow, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
And as a way to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the Aloha State, members of the Iglesia ni Cristo or Church of Christ recently teamed up with the Queen's Health System in hosting a free vaccination drive. Alfred Acenas from our EBC Hawaii Pacific has more.
The members of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo believe in taking care of our health so that we can continue in our worship and services to the Almighty God.
Members of the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ here in Hawaii Pacific continue their acts of charity, including their latest, a free vaccination drive in Waipahu on the island of Oahu.
The Church of Christ, with the partnership with Queen's Health System, right? We inform the community, right, by handing out flyers as early as we can, and there are online registration. We help them to fix or to arrange everything that is needed for this activity.
About a dozen staff from the Queen's Medical Center were on hand during the outreach event. And they too are doing their part in encouraging friends and family to get vaccinated.
There's still a few people who aren't vaccinated, although we are kind of meeting our 70% that the government wants. There's still that are very hesitant on getting the vaccine, and I've been kind of pushing my family and friends to get it as well, because I got it when we first started. So and they're very hesitant because it's a new vaccine, they're not familiar about it, and just the side effects kind of just make them very cautious on taking it. So just having more people kind of say, oh, it's okay, we got it. It's a big push for them to kind of be motivated to get vaccinated and help the community, have a herd community in our, just for everybody, just so it's more safer for us, especially with the the cases rising nowadays. Just having people vaccinated, it protects you. That's what it's supposed to do. It helps so that you don't go to the hospital, you don't get severe symptoms.
The Global Church further believes that there is another form of protection that people need amid the recent challenges caused by the pandemic.
We're also taking this opportunity not only to help them with their health, with material things, but most importantly, we use this activity to share our faith with our fellow men.
We are also conducting this activity that whenever we possibly can, to do good to those in need.
Finally, for INC members in the Aloha State and around the globe, the month of September holds a very important milestone.
It's also part of our celebration for the 12th year anniversary of our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, for his dynamic leadership to the entirety of the Church of Christ. We promise you po that we will continue to unite with you. We will continue to support activities And no matter what happens, the brethren here in Hawaii Pacific will continue to follow the teachings of God written in the Bible.
As of this report, nearly 64% of Hawaii's population have been fully vaccinated, while 72.1% have already received at least one dose.
We would also like to encourage others to also join in these kinds of events so that we may take good care of our health. Thank you.
Reporting from Waipahu, Hawaii, Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Alfred.
You know, at this point, it has become a civic duty for us to get vaccinated to protect others as well. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the weekend. Enjoy your weekend. I'm CJ Hero. We'll see you on Monday.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back on Monday. I'm Alma Angeles. And
we live
in interesting times.